Hello, and welcome to our podcast on the art of persuasion. Basically, how do we use the rhetorical triangle to persuade, to advertise, and to propagandize? So first off, what is persuading, or the idea of persuasion? It is the action or fact of influencing someone, or of being influenced to do or to believe something. In other words, we're encouraging someone to change his or her mind on an issue. And so perhaps we want someone to simply believe our idea. Perhaps we want someone to vote a certain way, to donate money, to donate their time. We might need to convince people to do something, and so we might have to persuade them to change their mind about something. And so why do these persuasive techniques matter? If you are a good persuader, you can convince people to do something, perhaps to vote a certain way, to believe a certain thing. And then on the other side of the issue, if we are a good reader or analyst of text, then we can see what kind of techniques the authors are using to try and persuade us. We can see what they're saying, we can deduce or figure out the techniques they're using, and then we can kind of pick apart their argument to see how they're trying to persuade us. Let's go ahead and start looking at some logical appeals, or appeals by logos. But as you see some of these, I'm sure you're going to have the potential to see overlap with pathos or also ethos, because these aren't exactly black and white, cut and dry. There's a lot of overlap between how one might interpret these techniques, but we've tried to compartmentalize them a little bit so that we could look at each point of the triangle in a little bit more specifics. So let's go ahead and start with what we feel are logical appeals. So the first logical appeal we might look at is the idea of bandwagoning. Basically, trying to persuade somebody of an idea because everybody else is doing it. So, if everybody is drinking vitamin water, or everybody else is buying a Verizon cell phone, or everybody else is buying an iPhone, then why don't you? And that seems to be a very logical appeal. It appeals to the brain. Now, I can see some emotional overlap there because you don't want to be left out if everybody else is doing it. But if the commercial is providing you with tons of statistics about how many people are buying a product, that seems very logical. That why wouldn't I also buy this product? If tens of thousands of people are subscribing to Verizon for cell phone coverage, why shouldn't I be 10,001? That's a very logical appeal. And again, bandwagoning, the idea that everybody else is doing it, so why don't you? The second logical appeal that we look at is what we call card stacking. So basically where we have advertisers distorting or omitting facts, or perhaps telling half-truths to sell a product or an idea. And so we see these commercials out there where they say that this product can absorb 32 ounces of a spilled liquid, as in the ShamWow. Well, maybe it can only actually absorb 8 ounces, or maybe even 4, but they're going to go ahead and tell you some sort of bolstered amount to make it sound really good. Or perhaps with the Snuggie, they're going to tell you that yes, this will generate X amount of degrees of heat with this amount of degree of freedom for your arms while you wear this ridiculous blanket sweater combo thing. Now, perhaps it will make you a little bit warmer, but can they really document that it's going to raise your body temperature X amount of degrees? Probably not. And then the idea of the as seen on TV logo on many products. Many people would say, hey, if it's on TV, it clearly has been vetted by somebody, so definitely the claims that they're making about this product must be true. And again, these are going to be appeals to the mind, very logical appeals, taking one fact and distorting it, blowing it out of proportion to try and get us to do something that they want us to do. Let's go ahead and take a look at some emotional appeal techniques that advertisers might use. So the first emotional appeal technique that we might see is the use of plain folks. And basically, this would be an advertisement where we see simple, down-to-earth people just like you and me who are selling a product or an idea. And so think of all those commercials that are out there that use what look like ordinary people. They look kind of plain. They're definitely not a celebrity or anybody famous, but they are saying, hey, I like this idea, or I like this candidate, or I like this product. And therefore, they're appealing to our sense of belongingness. I guess in a sense, it's very similar to the bandwagoning idea that if everybody's doing it, why shouldn't I? But specifically here, we're using the images of very plain-looking, ordinary citizens to sell an idea. And the idea is, hey, if this person can save 20% using Geico, why can't I? Hey, if Joe the plumber ordinary American wants to vote a certain way. Why shouldn't I? And we start to identify with these very ordinary American citizens, and then we find ourselves being persuaded by whomever is making the ad. Another emotional appeal technique we see is the idea of name calling. And this is where political candidates or perhaps advertised brands start calling their competitors names. And so in the upper left, we have the Big Mac Whopper commercial, where clearly the Whopper is calling the Big Mac not big, but going to go ahead and just call it medium because they're kind of making fun of its size, saying it's not really as big as the Whopper is. Clearly, it can't be called a Big Mac. It needs to be called the medium. On the upper right, Ann Coulter had a book called If Democrats Had Any Brains, They'd Be Called Republicans. Again, just name calling the Democrats, basically calling them stupid. But, lest anyone fear that only the Republicans were calling names, we have the bumper sticker in the bottom right where the Democrats are calling a Republican a name just as well. Name calling. And so it generates some emotional appeals, either like, yeah, I totally think that guy's an idiot. Yeah, I really don't like that product, and I get a little chuckle out of it when the competitors call them a name. Or perhaps I don't like a political party, so I really like it when the other side calls the other guy a bad name or makes fun of him. There's no real logical appeal here. It's all emotion. It's kind of that playground mentality of ganging up on somebody and just pointing a finger and calling them a name. But certain advertising moments may call for persuasion through name calling. Another emotional appeal is the idea of demonizing. And I think this takes name calling and goes a step farther. This isn't just saying that somebody's bad or medium or an idiot. This is actually making out the other product or the enemy out to be some sort of demonic figure. So I think we tend to see this persuasion technique when we are looking at propaganda, which is persuading around the idea of a war effort. How can we get a nation to mobilize for war against a certain enemy? Well, we need to persuade people. Sometimes we don't have to persuade that hard, as in the examples of World War II, where it was pretty clear that Hitler was a pretty bad dude. It didn't take a lot of persuading for people to see that. But to move the nation to war when we were in the midst of the Great Depression, the American government did try to do some persuading, some propagandizing to encourage the nation to look at the Germans and the Japanese as enemies. And so oftentimes they turned to the technique of demonizing, where basically the enemy is seen as subhuman. And so you can see some of the images there, where we have the Japanese soldier made to look out like some sort of monkey, some sort of subhuman creature. In the bottom right, the Japanese forces are made to look like bugs. And in the middle there, you can see the Germans in the form of Hitler made to be looking like the devil. So again, if we can persuade somebody through the technique of demonizing, it's the idea of taking the other product or the enemy and making them look like a demon, something subhuman, in order to persuade someone to do something. So we have another emotional appeal, very similar to the demonizing idea that we would see in wartime propaganda. We have the idea of the patriotic appeal. So this is kind of the opposite of demonizing, where we're not making the enemy out to look bad. We're out to make our cause look really good, really American, really wholesome, really for the best of the country. Hey, together we can do this. We can defeat the enemy. Let's all work together and go to the factories. Let's save our scrap food so we don't have any waste, so that all of our effort can go toward the war effort and defeating the enemy. We can do it. It makes any nation look really positive, patriotic, love of country type of appeal. Here we're just appealing to people's emotions of we can do it, let's get together, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. So again, appealing through emotion, the idea of patriotic appeals. Another emotional appeal we have on the list is what we call glittering generalities. And this is probably the technique we see the most in terms of advertising, where we see these generic labels that try to persuade people, words that cannot be logically defended. And so when we hear them, we're like, wow, if they say that it's democratic, or they say that it's good, or it's patriotic, or amazing, or beautiful, or exciting, I guess it is. We can't really logically defend that or deny that. It really just taps into that emotional belief of, yeah, I want something that is good. I want to vote for somebody who is patriotic. I want to go ahead and buy the best product. Now, the mocha from McDonald's may actually be the greatest mocha ever. But how could you prove that one way or the other? It's pure opinion. And so when you see advertisers just throwing out these generic terms that really can't be approved or denied, you're probably looking at something under the glittering generalities title. Another appeal to emotions is the idea of the catchy slogan. Just do it. Finger looking good. Think different. What exactly do these slogans mean? You have to spend some time and think about it to figure out what they're actually trying to tell us or what they're trying to inspire us to be, but they're certainly out there to try and persuade us. If we're looking to encourage somebody to buy athletic gear, then just do it is a pretty catchy slogan. It's short, straight to the point. You can remember it. People will automatically connect your product with the slogan, and it taps into something maybe inspirational or motivational. Just do it. Yeah, I could be a great athlete if I had those shoes. Yeah, I could be a great athlete if I had that warm-up. That would be great. And so, again, it's not really logical. You're going to be a good athlete if you train and work hard. But here they're selling a product. They're selling an identity. They're selling a belief system. And that's purely emotion through a very simple yet catchy slogan. Another emotional appeal is the idea of SNOB appeal. And this is when products tend to seek to persuade based on the idea that only the richest, most important people will buy this product. And so two famous examples there, we have the Fancy Feast in the bottom right. So if you have a really snobby cat and you want your cat to seem more like a princess than an actual feline, you might buy their product. But then the very famous commercial set from Grey Poupon Mustard, where they would have people driving around in Rolls Royces eating their lunch with Grey Poupon, and then another Rolls Royce would pull up next to them and say, "Excuse me, do you have any Grey Poupon?" And then somebody would hand it through the door and say, "Oh, but of course." Because clearly only wealthy people, only the elite, the top 1% can buy this product. And so if I want to be seen as wealthy, as popular through my use of money, then I definitely want to buy that product. And so we have the emotional idea of snob appeal, where they are appealing to only the richest, most discerning people and their use of this product. And then the last emotional appeal that we look at is the idea of appealing to humor. It seems like many of the commercials that we tend to see during the Super Bowl tend to appeal to humor. They try to make us laugh. They try to make us feel good, and they try to get that emotion of positivity associated with their product. So whether it's the overstuffed truck in the upper left supposedly being held together by Scotch tape, that's pretty funny. So it seems like, hey, if we can laugh at that, maybe that Scotch tape is really super duper strong. Let's go ahead and buy that for our next art project. Or perhaps the Harley Davidson commercial in the bottom there. Somebody really loves their Harley and they just assume that pose throughout their daily life, even when they're pushing the kid in the stroller. That's pretty funny. I feel pretty good. I want that kind of joy in my life. Why don't I go out and buy a Harley? And again, if it makes you laugh, if it gives you a good feeling, you're more likely to associate that humor with their product. And then perhaps the next time you're at the grocery store, you'll pick up one for yourself. Again, using humor to appeal to emotion. And so the last ones we would look at are ethical appeals, or appeals to ethos, or basically the credibility of the speaker. Who is presenting this message? Why should we believe them? Why are they credible speakers? These are going to be ethical appeals. So one example of an ethical appeal comes from the idea of testimonials. And this is where we have endorsements by famous people, such as sports figures or movie stars, to sell a product. This is where we actually have that famous person saying, "I use this product and I like it," or "I use this product and it has helped me in this way." For it to be a testimonial, we have to see the famous person actually saying, "I use this product and it has helped me." And the tie to ethos then is, well, if Shaquille O'Neal, a famous basketball player, has used Icy Hot to help him recover from his basketball injuries, then clearly this is an amazing product so that I, the weekend warrior, can recover from my own sports adventures by using the same product. If the famous person says it works for them, it can totally help me, the little guy. So the testimonial, appealing to the ethos and the rhetorical triangle, looking at the credibility of the speaker. And if that speaker is well matched with the product they're trying to sell and it resonates with the audience to whom they're trying to sell it, then we're going to have effective communication and people might start buying that product. The last technique we would look at is also an ethical appeal, and this is the idea of transfer. Now, this is going to sound very similar to the idea of testimonial, but we see it as a little bit different. A testimonial is when you actually have the famous person saying the words, "I use this product, I like it, therefore you should too." Something like that, where they're holding the product. Transfer is going to be a little bit different. Again, it's going to use the idea, the image, the likeness of a famous person, but that person isn't actually going to say the specific words of, "I use the product, you should too." So in the examples you see there, you see very famous people. People in a Wheaties box, people selling a drink, people selling a camera. They are famous people, but we don't have those famous people uttering the words, "Since I've used it, you should use it too." Basically, all they're doing is lending their image, lending the face of themselves to try and sell this product. And since we see their famous faces on these products, we assume that they actually use these products. They may or may not, but they're using their likeness, their famousness to try and sell this product. So that's about it for today in terms of the art of persuasion, the different techniques where advertisers or propagandizers are going to use to try to persuade us to do something, whether that's simply to believe them, to vote a certain way, or to buy a product. They're going to use that rhetorical triangle and the 3 points on there to try and create a convincing argument. They're going to use logos or appeals to logic, appeals to our brain, charts, statistics, figures, things that are very logical in nature. They're also going to appeal to pathos or our emotions. These aren't techniques that are completely tangible, but it's the idea of it hits us at the heart. We want to feel a certain way, we want to believe a certain thing. So if they're telling us if we buy this product, we'll feel a certain way, we'll think a certain way, we'll have a certain social status, we can't put our finger on that. It just appeals to the emotion of our heart. And then finally, ethos, or the appeal to the credibility of the speaker. If we see a famous person and they're either just lending their image, as in a transfer moment, or they're actually saying, "I've used this product, it's amazing," and they are giving a testimonial, we somehow feel that that product is more credible at whatever it's designed to do. And again, then we're more likely to do something, to vote a certain way, to buy a certain thing, to donate our time. So I think that's it. If you have any questions, go ahead and bring those in the class. Otherwise, thanks, and we'll see you soon.